Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Talk Crazy to Me. I'm your host, Tanya, and today my guest is Tiffany.
Hi.
Hi, Tiffany. Hi. I'm so excited.
Me too.
I always start off the episode by saying how we know each other. So do you want to say how we met?
I do. So we met 10 years ago?
Is it 10?
About 10 years ago? 10 or over, like 10 or 11 years.
I want to say over.
Working in a group home.
Yes.
That's how we know each other.
We did. We met at working both at the same mental health facility. Yeah. And then we worked in different programs.
Yes.
But then I sometimes did relief work at your program.
Yeah.
So we met.
Yeah. And we hit it off.
Click.
Yeah. We were like the same.
The same. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
I remember having like one of our first shifts together. Yeah. And we just sat downstairs. Yeah. We're supposed to be probably watching the kids a little bit more. Yeah. But we were chit-chatting the whole time. And we had connections. I don't know. I just remember hitting it off.
Yeah.
And it was really easy.
Yeah.
And when it came to doing this, I just thought of you right away. Yeah. Like pretty soon on into it. Yeah. And you said yes right away. And that was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Of course. And then scheduling, of course. But like
scheduling, yes,
so
is always harder. But the initial feeling of like whenever I ask someone to do this, if they hesitate in any sort of way, I know it's not the time. Yeah. Yeah. But if they're like, game in, let's go, let's do this, then I know they're a good fit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Here we are.
So my first question to you, Tiffany, is what makes you crazy?
I thought about this so much. And I whittled it down to a very broad answer. Okay?
Okay.
The answer I have is the lack of self-awareness.
Ooh. Yes. In others.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that's because I practice it often in myself. I think it's a career thing, like that's just professionally also, but in others. And it's a lack of self-awareness, which then leads, this is why it's so broad, into like the lack of consideration, the lack of intention, the lack of care, the lack of, right? Like,
yes.
So that grinds my gears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because when I hear you say that, when I say things about people being not self-aware, sometimes I'm jealous of it. In a way that that sounds really weird, but that's what made me think of that. Sometimes when people live in that bubble, I'm like almost envious. I'm like, I want to know what that feels
like.
Can
you imagine just being selfish all day?
Well, or just like not being aware of your own shit just seems like it's dangerous in so many ways. But there is a piece of me that's always like, when I can see right through it, right? Yeah. When you meet someone and you know right away that they're not self-aware. Yeah. I'm like, wow, it must be nice sometimes. Yeah. Because I'm overly self-aware.
Yeah. Yes.
And that can be a double-edged sword too.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
That's like, I can remember doing therapy in the beginning, the very first time I did it. And I just rambled on about all my shit. And then the therapist said back to me, you were so self-aware. And she's like, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't feel ahead of the game. Yeah. I didn't feel it. Yeah. But I do know. So I see it. Yeah. I see you. But I also have this thing sometimes with people that are not self-aware that I'm like, is it easier?
No, because the why I say it's something that like rubs me the wrong way is because I see people, clients, be frustrated by people in their lives who lack self-awareness, and then those people who lack self-awareness be miserable because they don't understand why nobody gets it, or they don't understand why their reaction to something was taken poorly. And it's like, but did you think about the person that you're speaking to? Yes. Do you consider that they can't receive information that way? Do you consider that maybe you've hurt them in the past and so they actually refuse, or like their physical body is reacting to like you yelling at them, right? Or are you self-aware enough that like what you're about to say is a you problem, not a them problem? It's kind of in that way, right? Like, are you self-aware enough in your relationships to, like with anybody, like romantic relationships, professional friends, and all of that, family relationships, to identify like what is your responsibility in that relationship if it's not going the way you want it to go.
Right.
Right? Like, are you treating people with care so that they want to support you? Are you intentional about how you're saying things so that they can listen to you?
Yes.
So that's what it is, right? When I see people get really frustrated, I don't understand why she doesn't want to or he doesn't want. It's like, well, think about it with me for a second.
Yes.
What would make you, if the roles were reversed, why would you be doing that? Oh, right? It's like,
yes. I think sometimes people need that flip.
Yeah.
To actually, my mom's like that.
Yeah.
I love my mom. But if she hasn't been through something,
yes,
she doesn't understand it.
Yes. Which is fair.
Yeah. But then there are some people that don't have to go through it to get it.
Yeah.
You can have empathy, you can have all those things without, like, I don't need to be, addicted to cocaine to know how hard it would feel to be in those, you know what I mean? So, but my mom is the type of person that if she hasn't been through it, she can only see it through her lens. And so I wonder, my question then to you is, what do you think makes people not self-aware? Like, where do you think a lot of it comes from? Is it just a blinder effect because they can't see their own shit? Like, they're not there yet?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I focus a lot on self-regulation. That was going to be my original answer, people who aren't regulated.
Right.
But like all of us come with our own crap, right? But I think this is why self-awareness lacks, is because at the very base of like why we react to things is our nervous system. And if that goes out of whack and we aren't working on it, or a window of tolerance is like this big, then we don't have the capacity to be as self-aware because we're triggered, right?
Right.
So I think it's more so like if somebody has not worked on self-regulation, they're less likely to be self-aware. So I think it stems from like the inner work, like the actual somatic work of like, are you in a good place when you open something up to people? If you notice that you're activated, are you taking a minute to like put your breath back in your body? Are you making sure that you're like, loosening up your joints a little bit before you get into something that you may not be able to be caring about or intentional about? So are you okay?
Right.
Before you...
Right.
Yeah. And have you considered everything? And I think that literally starts at the core of like, what are you coming in with?
Right.
Yeah.
And also, yes, self-regulation is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And I think it's about, like I always say, because most of my work was with kids.
Yeah.
And I find kids are easier for me.
Yeah, because
they are learning and they're like more adaptable and they are not as stuck in their ways and they can, kids just
they're honest.
They're honest.
Like,
they're real. Honest. They don't. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like we get more jaded, and we get more like we mask more the older we get, and that's why I always love kids and relate to kids and just can go in it with them because they're so real about their shit.
Yeah.
And I forgot where I was going with that, but I basically feel like with adults it's harder. It's harder to get them to go.
Well, there's ego, right? Like if you think about like, so what is a developmental age? Like 12 to 18, where like ego starts to become like a central focus of why we do the things we do, like high school and all that stuff.
Yes.
And it's not because that adolescent teenage years are selfish. Their ego is developing, right? Like where they fit, where they belong. Yeah. But the littles before that, they don't really have that yet. They're like, are they happy? Are they sad? Are people nice or mean to them, right? Like it's very basic. But then when you get into like 21 and older, that ego is still there, very much there. And if no one's helped us like be self-aware with it and help us break it down, that always comes into play when we have, because it's like my feelings are hurt and you talked to me this way and you didn't consider, right? It's all like me.
And very reactive,
ego.
right?
Oh, yeah.
The reactive part of like what you were describing, the self-regulating, just slowing it down before you attack in some ways, right? That piece of how do you just check yourself before you do what you're about to do.
Before you wreck yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Because And that piece I always try with kids too, just to stop. Like, because when we are angry and that part of our brain is activated, we just see red. And then the choices we make are going to not be good ones.
That's right.
It just is the reality of the situation. Yeah. So just kind of slowing down yourself for just a few minutes even can make a world of difference in how you respond. Yeah. And then how you respond plays in, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it is that basic, just slow it down.
I dysregulate often. Like, I had a conversation with my best friend. We voice note every single day. So if I'm driving to work, right, because it's hard to get on the phone. And there was this one time where I was so activated. I was so triggered. And I was like, I do everything. He does nothing. Yeah. I'm doing this. And then I was like, hold on, girl. Let me talk this through over voice note. My husband does 50% of everything, if not during other times, more.
Right.
But because of the way that I saw my mom dysregulate, I only saw what she was doing because she did everything.
Right.
That I blocked out anything that potentially my dad did, which, again, I felt uneven growing up, like when I look back. But I have to like slow myself down because it's actually not the truth. Like I actually don't do everything.
Right.
I feel like I do when I get upset because I'm overwhelmed or because I'm tired or, you know, we raise a son with a disability. So when I'm feeling grief about it, right? Or I'm processing kind of that I'm like, I do everything. And I have to slow myself down because it's actually not true.
Right.
So before what I used to do previously, like in my first marriage, was completely dysregulate and say, I do everything.
Yes.
This time around, because I've learned, gone to therapy, all that stuff, I don't. First of all, it's not received very well. My husband's the first person to be like, I don't really know who you're speaking to. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, I forgot. We're partners. We're not enemies.
Yes.
But I don't because it's actually not the truth. And if I continue to think this way, I can convince myself that I do everything.
Yeah.
And then look at him and be like,
yeah.
Why do I want to be with someone who doesn't? Right. And that's not what's going on. So when it comes to the self-awareness piece, I always think to myself, it's really hard because then I have to calm myself down.
Yeah.
But it's hard. But I do it because I want relationships to feel good and I want to feel good in them. Yeah. So that's why sometimes I struggle when people are like, what's the big deal that I said that to them? And it's like,
yeah. But ownership is a big thing.
Huge.
And I think being able to say when you did something wrong is a huge thing. Accountability is people are so scared to own it. And that's the part that I'm just like, you know, I too am guilty of going off in moments and over generalizing the moment because you're so overwhelmed. Yeah. But when you stop and you think about it and you come back to it, there's so much in being able to go back and say, you know what, I was overreacting. I overdid it. Yeah. I should have, was thinking this way. And when I, was in the moment, whatever it is. But I think a lot of people are still scared to go to those places, not realizing how much growth it takes.
And it's powerful
to have.
Too,
it's
right?
so powerful.
Like if you apologize to somebody or you acknowledge that what you did could have been done differently and that it hurt somebody's feelings, there's so much connectedness in that. Yeah. That that's a really nice thing that you've given to someone. Yeah. The validation that they, not that they were right, but that you reacted poorly and that you apologize. And there's so much, and my husband and I had this conversation once where he said, I was apologized to all the time as a kid and behavior never changed. And so I struggle with apologizing to you or to our kids because I feel like if I haven't changed it yet, then I don't have anything to show for it. So when I apologize, I feel like it's bogus because I haven't done the work yet.
Right.
So I always have to say to him I totally understand that and I totally get where that comes from and that helps me understand why in certain situations when I'm kind of like, this is the time, he's not doing it. But then we still have that conversation about why it's important and he is working on it and he's actually doing a fantastic job. He apologized a few weeks ago for something and I was like, I felt like my heart be it kind of twisted because I was like, that made me feel really nice. And it makes me actually want to be around you. Yeah. Because now we can squash it. But if you don't acknowledge or take accountability, I want to be the furthest away from you that I can be. Yeah. The furthest. Like upstairs.
Makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. And I think, I can see where he's coming from in the sense of not wanting to just have what's it called? Like a useless apology,
Yeah.
like where you're right back to doing it 5 minutes later, and then
Yeah.
it's like, why the hell did you apologize if you know what I
you're
mean?
gonna do it
So
again.
I can get that.
Yeah.
I actually never heard it described that way, which is pretty interesting. But to then still have some growth where you realize, no, but that apology actually does mean something.
It's not for you.
Yeah,
like you apologize to me because it's for me.
and it did something for you.
Yeah.
Then he can hopefully learn from that piece of just like, it doesn't have everything have to be fixed.
Yeah.
But it's just the actual act of like owning something that you did wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And you know, I used to, when I did worked with kids, and we would do conflict resolution about stuff, you know, drama, like during recess time, and then they come to you and they're having all their discussions. My thing that I always with them is when we're sitting around and we're talking about the situation was, tell me what you did wrong in it. Because in every situation, we can take something and have done it better, right? It's so easy to point a finger at someone, say, you did this, you did that.
Oh, there's a dysregulation.
Right.
You.
Yeah. But like, stop and think about the whole situation and think, okay, how could I have handled that better? And then when you start there and each person kind of goes around starting there, it just brings everything down, because you realize, wait a second, I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I did something wrong there too. And if I own it, it gives other people the opportunity to own it.
Yep.
And then we can all work it out.
Yeah.
But if it's just that I did nothing wrong, I'm perfect, and the other person is the problem,
Yes.
where do you grow? Where do you learn? Where do you go from there? Because it's like that right fighting, right?
Yep.
So I feel like there's just so much in learning to own your shit.
Yeah.
In every aspect of life, like within every type of relationship.
Well, I say to the couples I work with all the time, right? Like, there may be a time where it isn't 50-50, right? There may be a time where you guys will come to me and one person will be at fault, right? But sometimes even in that, the person who is not at fault can help that person be more accountable, right? Like, state your boundary, state why that was a problem.
Right.
If we're not kind of saying, like, advocating for ourselves, even if one person is the problem, then it like almost allows it to happen again, right? Like, you're kind of like validating that this is fine with me.
Yeah.
So I think even in that, like, one person still might be responsible, but the other person still has the ability to say, like, we're not going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
So there's still that piece of like, you can still say or be responsible for a piece of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if it's to course correct, right?
Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah.
So I haven't asked you, because I know you, but I'm just going to ask you so everybody knows, what do you do for a living? What is your... Because we met as child and youth workers, right?
We did.
But I feel like you've gone above and beyond that.
I have gone. So I am a social worker / psychotherapist.
Yes.
I work in private practice. I work downtown at Wellbe Family Wellness, and I support individuals, adolescents, couples, and families.
Nice. Yes. Beautiful.
I know, it's great, actually.
I love that.
I've done it for 3.5 years. It's my favorite thing in the world. I love all my clients. They're fantastic. It's great work. And we have a fantastic team. And I think one of the things, like the hazard of, I guess, being a psychotherapist is that you see a lot of, you just see a lot of similar occurrences. And I think that's why my answer was like lack of self-awareness. Because if you just... It goes so far. And so a lot of the work that I do with my clients is like nervous system regulation, is self-awareness, is boundary setting, is intention, is right. It's so much of the, we'll just call it like basic work. Like, yes, we do the whole, let's talk about your parents and your kids and your trauma and your relationship. But at the baseline of it, it's like, well, what are you aware of?
Right.
What are you aware of that is happening, right? Like on a day-to-day basis, like how often do you pause and say, what do I need today? What do I need right now? How's my body doing? Have I nourished myself, nurtured myself? If I don't have enough sleep, what does the day look like? What can I do less of or more of?
Right.
So it's basic at the core.
Basic
before
needs.
We get into the big things. Like, let's kind of like figure out what you have going on.
Yes.
Before we jump into the big stuff.
Yeah.
So.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
And if I ever continued
my
education, which I think about sometimes. Psychotherapist.
I'm like a wild overachiever.
Oh, but that's amazing. Like, see, I always hated school, so it was like, how do I get through this fastest?
I hated high school.
But the minute we did
child and youth work, I was like, I think this is where I should be.
Yes. That's how I felt when I found the child and youth worker program. I didn't even know what it was.
Me neither.
I had no idea what a child and youth worker was.
I don't want to be a social worker.
I didn't want to be a teacher. That was me. I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. What do I do? And I knew I wanted to work with kids. And I went into my volunteer class. It was like a food and nutrition class. It was the bird course.
Yeah.
And I ended up working with all the kids that were failing. And then I was so much more interested in why they were failing than helping them pass the course. So I started this like, what's going on here? And you know, what's underneath this? And like, and then that's how I helped. So then when I got into child and youth work, I was like, oh, that makes sense. That's a fit. And then
I love that.
Yeah, but so I did my degree in psych and then I did child and youth work, but I never furthered it. Yeah. But once I met and started doing work with a psychotherapist, I was like, damn, if I ever went back to school, that's exactly what
I went to child and youth work because I had Cass. And when she was born, I had horrible postpartum. I had postpartum for 2 years straight.
Wow.
It was pretty brutal. It was the darkest time of my life. I cried all the time. And I crank called people and cried. And then they knew it was me.
Wow.
But it was a crank call because I would hang up. Anywho, I was like, I have no idea about being a mom. And I realized when I had her, I had a ton of like my own stuff I hadn't processed from my childhood and was like, how do I be a good parent?
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I went to child and youth work because I was like, I really want to work with these people.
Right.
It was because I was like, I just don't want to traumatize my own child, which I'm sure she'll go to therapy one day and be like, no, she totally did. There was a ton of things because we grew up together, her and I. But I went because I was like, I just want to be a really good mom.
Yeah.
Ended up loving it, loving my placement.
Yeah.
And was like, no, this is, oh my God, this is what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. Oh, and then also watched Dr. Phil when I was 17 and was like, if I can be him.
Me too.
So I went to school and then went all the way because I was like, Dr. Phil, here I come.
That's so funny because I did the same thing about Dr. Phil. I was like, I could do that better. Like, I was like, it was so good. It was so good. But I wanted to, I wanted sort of at some point the Dr. Tanya kind of thing. And and because I wanted to have my own talk show, which is this. In a sense. Yeah. So I felt the same way about it. I was like, I just loved it. And I
was going to stop at The Bachelor. But then when we moved to California, my husband was like, you should apply for a master's. And I was like, okay, this is so fun. We'll just do one school. Yeah. What school should I apply to? He's like, you should do USC. And I was like, nobody gets into USC. Wow. So she did.
Yeah. Amazing.
Before the scandal with all the celebrities paying for the kids. Yes. And it was the best program ever and had fun. Amazing. And then he was like, you should go for your doctorate. And I was like, yes, I should. And so amazing. We just decided to
I love that he was that cheerleader.
He loves it because he's like, just keep going because like he always says like, this is what you wanted.
Yeah.
So like, let's get you what you want. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try my best.
That's
so
amazing.
We did.
And I've seen, like me and you have talked here and there through it. And I've seen the journey through it on Facebook mostly, but it's just like, it's just, no, but congratulations. Like I'm super proud of you for seeing like where, we started
to where we are. Where we started. We were.
I know. We made it through.
We were kind of struggling most of a bit, but like we did it.
We did it.
And we were in some rough, like those were some rough, I remember like the chats that we would have and like there were some rough like entrances exiting 20 and into 30.
Yes.
Right? Like I think all of us women go through the entrance into 30 and it's kind of rough and bumpy. Yeah. And like that's kind of where we were.
We were. And we were very open with each other about how we were feeling during those times. Yeah. And I just remember thinking you were someone I instantly could tell my truth to.
Well, we were like the same. We were the same.
We had some LA things. Yes. The same. And there was just some, and I think it was just, we just connected on a very like human level always of just not feeling like, in that place, I had to put on a mask in a lot of ways, and I never felt that with you. I was like, and those are always my people, and those are the people, and still I have quite a few people that I talked to from that time period in my life that I met along the child and youth worker journey, and the people that stuck it around with me or through everything were just those people that were authentic, that weren't playing the game, that weren't the bullshit, that were just like
self-aware,
and there for the right reasons. You know?
Yeah.
Not,
I know.
Because there was a lot of people
we had some hard times.
And because we were very not afraid to speak our mind.
Yeah.
And that's not always
no, it's not
always. It's not always like celebrated,
especially for females, right? Like a strong willed, strong-minded female is always kind of looked at as like, oh my God, she's so bitchy.
Yes, she's such a bitch.
Yeah,
because she, is
saying she doesn't like something,
or she's trying to, mix things up. And it was like, no, we were advocating, and we were, I don't
know, following program rules because that's what we were supposed to be doing, not like torturing the kids. Like we were,
I think it was
having a nice time and like doing what we should have been doing and building really strong relationships with the kids we were working with. And sometimes that wasn't the agenda for some of the our esteemed colleagues.
Without going into too much detail about it. Yeah, it was very, I just remember feeling like there were certain things that made me exactly who I was, exactly still who I am today, that was trying to be silenced a little bit. Yeah. And I felt that through a lot of my career, not just there, in other places where I was just like, I never fit in where people were trying to shut me up. Because I always felt like I had a really good idea of what the kids and clients and
1,000%.
Students and people needed. Yeah. And if it was outside of the box, people were afraid of it. Yeah. And I was never afraid. I was like, what are you talking about?
Let's just try.
Let's just try to do it this way. Or let's just, I remember this one little girl that was autistic, and she was 8 at the time. The coolest. One of the kids that I will remember for the rest of my life.
Yes.
And they told us she will never learn sarcasm.
And
that was like, I was like,
watch this.
I'm sorry, wait, what? Pardon?
Yeah.
Every time anyone said anything, my other favorite one was when they're like, he doesn't like to hear the word no. And I was like, oh, really?
That's my favorite word.
That's my favorite word, too. I was like, what do you think they're going to hear from me the first time they meet me?
It's always no.
It's always, everyone has to learn how to accept no. But anyways, to go back to her, I just remember thinking, don't say what kids can and can't do or can't, just limit them that way.
Yeah.
And I remember my good friend Kelly and I worked with her, and we were very sarcastic people together.
Yeah.
Kelly and I put us together. We still have that sarcastic tone. And she was picking it up, and she was doing a little, by the end of it, was like, dressing like us, acting like us, and had this little, she just made this joke. I wish I could remember the joke, but it was like so timing, sarcasm was perfect. Like she got it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, she did.
Yes, she did.
And those are the kind of things that I remember thinking, don't ever say to me that a kid can't.
Yeah.
Or someone can't. Yeah. Because that just fuels my energy to prove them wrong.
I think that's what I loved about transitioning into private practice work is that you come from a huge organizational community background, right? Like worked in foster care even when I was in LA.
Yeah.
And so it was very structured. And LA, that was actually one of my favorite jobs, working at that for that wonderful community practice.
Yeah.
Transitional housing for 18 to 25.
Yeah.
Met some of the best people, best social workers, smart, in my life, just amazing people. But going into private practice, no one's around to be like, Tiff, I don't think they can, it's just me.
Yeah.
And me being able to say, I actually think you can do that. Yeah. And it's the most liberating thing to be like, no, none of you are going to tell me that program can't support because I am the program and I will support and here we go. And I think that that's one of the things I loved about having so much freedom is that we don't have the box of being well, I don't know, we can't really I don't really know how that'll be received. And that's not her program or that's not what he can do.
Yes.
Or we can't support trying to do that. And it's actually
I can. Yeah.
And I will. And I'll call your teacher. And I'll call your doctor. And like, I think that's the cool thing too, is that like being able to advocate isn't just like me sitting with my clients like this. It's like talking to their providers, their doctors, the teachers of the children that I support, right? Like it's being able to kind of have it like me be present for them in all in the areas they need me to be. And that feels huge, like bigger than what we used to do in organization, right?
Yes. No, I love that. No, I think, I think it's scarier for some people. Yeah. And it's riskier. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
But, and not everyone can do it.
Yeah.
But I think people, I know for sure that being out of those bigger organizations and doing my own thing and being my own boss in some ways, that works for me.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't very good at, you know, always taking that feedback of like when someone says like they can't or they, anything like that. I was always like, what are you talking about? And then I just slowly realized that the people that were moving up were always the people that were just very agreeable and you know what I mean? And did, and you know, kept their mouth shut and didn't. So I was just like, I don't think I'm ever going to fit in this world. And I'm just so much happier sort of having that same thing, same, no one telling me no one telling me I can't, no one, I love that. I love that you're doing that because
no one tells me no.
No one tells you no, and you can just get to be
the people tell me no, I'm like, okay. Because but I love it. I think it's great.
No, I think what you're doing is great.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah. Me and my crazy, every time I meet a new client and we do like, you know, we do these little like meet and greets, right? To see if it's, I always call it like speed dating for therapists.
Yeah, love that.
And the first thing I say to this potential client is, if you love Unhinged, this is where you want to be, because this is exactly what you're going to get. Like, I'm not going to turn all this off and then suddenly I'm going to have like the bun and the glasses and like, right? I'm going to have my notebook. Like, if we're going to do this, I'm the most honest, one of the most honest people. And like, you can call me out, I'll call you out. Like, we're going to get to work. We're going to do work. So like, I think there's freedom in being able to be like, this is just our honest selves. And so I'm going to hold you accountable.
Yes.
And sometimes I'm going to say no. Yeah. And sometimes you'll tell me no. And like, we'll just do it.
Without being authentic, it doesn't work.
No, because I think people know, right? Like if I were to sit in front of someone that I was like, I want you to be my therapist. I had a therapist once that fell asleep in sessions. He also, for the audience out there, said to me that I'm too pretty to have problems. And he wasn't really sure why I was there. Being in the space that I was was like, maybe he just was like being nice and like just obviously wasn't, I'm going to therapy, so obviously something was going on for me at the time.
Yeah.
And continued to go for a couple more sessions and he fell asleep. And I was like, am I just boring the crap out of this guy? That he's just horrible. Like, oh, look, she's divorced, but at least she's good looking. Like, right? I just was like, this is so...
You know what that reminded me of? I had a boss once that told me that I was too pretty to be smart. To be smart. I was like, it was like the most... I was like, wait a second. Because I was applying, I was working at I was doing reception and I was applying for university. And he was like, oh, I didn't think you could be that pretty and that smart. And I was like...
Ew.
That's
ick. That's the ick.
That was the ick.
Yeah.
I didn't stay very much after that. And I just remember thinking, what kind of backwards...
What does that
even mean?
No, that's just gross. I don't think it means anything other than it's gross.
But it reminded me of that story of like hearing something of like, what does that... And it's interesting that people think that if you're pretty, you don't have problems. That's like... What does that even mean?
Oh my gosh, I have clients who would go and I had this one client, she's in high school and she went to a psychiatrist because she was like, I'm pretty sure I'm on the autism spectrum. And he said to her, you don't look autistic. And so her and I, whenever we have sessions, not all the time, but whenever we have sessions, she's like, remember that one time? And I was like, don't say it.
No.
But like, it's wild, right? Like,
wild.
All of the stories I hear from my clients who've had like kind of nightmarish experiences, and this is really kind of, I'm not generalizing when I say this, but a lot of it is from like a male psychiatrist, a male like psychologist, right? Not from necessarily a social worker. I think like from our lens, we're incredibly self-aware, I'd like to think, but like it's that whole Freudian, like misogynistic, like you don't look this way. So I also love the work that I do is I try to break down a lot of like conditioned learning and biases. Like I do it all the time. Like, let me stop you there because this is what I'm picking up. I feel like I'm like a spiritual healer, but like this is what I'm picking up when you say this. I don't feel like that's something you learned because I feel that too. So let's talk about that before we get into anything else because there's so much in there that isn't ours, like that it's so learned and conditioned. So
and it is. And that also made me think, not to go too much on this topic, but I do remember also always hearing that I couldn't be shy if I was pretty. That was another one too. That I remember thinking, it's a really weird thing, but I remember like, you know, people would always tell me before they spoke to me that they thought I was a bitch. Like I heard that. I probably heard that.
I got
70,000 times in my life.
95% of people that meet me are like, I thought you were.
Yeah, I thought you were a bitch before I talked to you. And I was like, I don't even know how to. Like, obviously, you don't think I'm a bitch to say that to me, right? Like you wouldn't say that. Something made you feel comfortable enough to even say that out loud. But I've heard it so many times in my life, and it's so funny because I'm like, I'm just really shy.
I feel like that's what you and I talked about.
Yes,
right?
Probably.
Was that like
that shy? Because that feeling of like, I was a shy person, and it takes me a while.
It was me being shy, not me being an asshole.
I'm not a bitch. I'm actually just really shy, and
nervous and really scared and afraid you're judging me, and I have all this anxiety and like.
But they would say, my friend Catherine jokes all the time. She's like, and again, it's like kind of like a compliment, but a backwards one because she was just like, I just thought you were so pretty that you couldn't be shy, and I was just or nice or nice or whatever.
Or caring,
and I just thought, what a funny thing.
Yeah.
To have to think about when you're just being yourself
but
and
conditioning,
not,
right?
But
like,
conditioning.
Don't we learn that like a pretty person is probably not that nice, probably not that smart,
right?
Probably has pretty friends too, probably has an eating disorder, right? Like that, like let's label
all of those
all the things so that when. And that's like adolescence. You learn that really young, right? Like we start hearing it when we're in grade school and elementary school. And then it like kind of sticks. And now we're in our adult lives.
Yes.
And that unhealed kid is running around in here being like, no, pretty people can't be your friend. Because like, I don't know if you're that pretty too, right? Like there's just
but it's such a weird thing because I never think of myself that way.
Yes.
I don't walk around being like, oh, you know what I mean? I'm so pretty. I don't, you just walk around being you. And then people... Like, I can actually actively now think of times in my life that people treated me a certain way because they thought I was a certain way based on how I looked. And I was just like, it's because I didn't do that to people. I don't think. Maybe I did, but I don't feel like I
think
did.
If anything, if I look at myself, maybe it made me timid when it came to talking to certain people or I stayed away from certain people because I was like, they'll never accept me. So maybe I judged based on the fact that I thought they were super pretty, but not because I thought they were like, maybe judgy, but this is high school me too, right? But not because I thought they were dumb or because I thought they were whatever. I just was like, they probably won't like me. Like, I won't fit there.
Right.
Like, so I don't think I should be like, hi Samantha, hi Vivian, right? Like I just was like, I'm just going to stay here in the corner so that they don't come to me and say, what would ever make you think
you could talk to me?
Right. So it wasn't ever me judging because I've always been judged.
Yes.
So I would kind of always look at people and be like, I don't think they'll like me. Because if I'm being told like, oh, you're too pretty to A, B, C, and D, then no, who the hell else would like me?
Yeah.
Right? So I think that was that's how I
do now remember talking about that.
Yeah.
We had that conversation.
We did.
And it is, you know, we were young when we were talking about that.
We were like so
too.
young, but like not that young.
But we were, but I think now I think of myself as
11
older.
years ago.
Yeah.
We were so tiny.
Yeah, but it was just, I loved, I loved that connection to feeling like there was nothing you were putting out there. And that's why I think we connected so easily because we got each other on a level that some people don't get it, right? The awareness is there. There was something there. So I love that we've stayed connected.
Me too.
And that we've done this. But I want to go back a little bit.
Yes.
When you talked about getting to child and youth work and you were just becoming a mom.
Cassie was about a year.
How old were you then?
25, 26.
Okay.
Yeah.
So mid-20s age.
Yep,
and,
right.
Yeah.
Smack in the right when my frontal lobe was fully developed. I became a mother.
Yes.
Which, like, looking back, when you think 25, it's not the youngest.
No, but
being 25.
I think it happened to me at 25. It would have been really hard.
Yeah. I didn't know anything about myself. I knew nothing about myself.
Yes.
I knew nothing about what I wanted. I was still working in retail, which is where I thought I would end up. Because I was doing visual merchandising. So I was on the fashion side of things.
Yep.
And so I was like, that's where I'm going to be. And I had we just got married.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about marriage. Still had baggage from my
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I hit the postpartum and was just like aggressively angry all of the time that I was like, I can't be that person to this kid. She didn't ask for this.
Yeah.
And I had no skills, actually, because no one had ever told me that postpartum was possible.
Was the thing.
And I thought, like, what else don't I know? Because if I'm being told this is magical, and it isn't, and if I'm being told that I'll be the most happiest and elated and in love I'll ever be, and I'm not, what else don't I know?
And what's wrong with me, almost?
And what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, I thought I'm supposed to be loving this, and this kid is crying, and I think to myself, like, I just want to jump off something. Like, that can't be normal. So I went to try and course correct, like, almost like the aggressive side.
Right.
The side that, like, when I was growing up and I was getting spanked all the time for things, that was my modeling. And I thought to myself, like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be like what my parents did.
Right.
And I remember having a conversation with my daughter's dad at one point, and he grew up like in the same way, being spanked, right? He grew up in Nicaragua. And so being spanked in the 80s was a thing. And I think it wasn't until our daughter got older that we were like, we just can't be doing that.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not what we don't want to do any of that. And so going back to school meant learning how to be, and I hate this, like, gentle parent. It's not gentle. It's like treating them like they're human, right? Like, so I went back to try and be a better mom.
Yeah.
And learn about child development and how to not mess her up too much.
I mean, listen, therapy's there for reasons. She's probably going to want to need it, have it, and that's okay. Yeah. But actively trying to undo those things as a young adult and realizing that. And I think also the postpartum stuff, nobody was talking about it then.
No, in 2007, who was like, hey, postpartum.
Yeah,
like, online.
Nobody was talking about it. And still the shame attached to mental health.
We're just like, everyone goes through it. So just deal. And I'm like, how is someone supposed to get over this?
Yeah.
And social media was just coming up. Like, I think Facebook was still only accessible for university kids. So there was no online resources. It wasn't like I could look at what this was or Google symptoms, and WebMD would be like, you have postpartum, right?
Yes.
So it was just suffering alone. And when I told my mom's like, yeah, I had that with both of you. So, like, you'll be fine. Like, it just was, again, right? Like, that's just what you have. And it's like, no, man. So if I had known earlier, I might have been a really great candidate for medication.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
but look at how you turned it into what you turned it into. Yeah. Because that is the story. That is where it's like you started and found child and youth work as like this thing for yourself, but then it blossomed into everything else for other people. Yeah. Which is pretty...
It's kind of cool, right? Like, I thought I'd be going back and, like, building displays and dressing mannequins and, like, all that stuff and opening.
But the fashion's still in you, girl.
She'll never there. She'll never not.
She's still there.
Everyone always laughs when I go into clinic. They're like, "What's Tiff gonna wear today?"
But don't you love that you still have that side?
I always like, it's literally in my blood.
Yeah.
Like, the best time of my life, I was talking to my friends about this, the girls that I have as friends that still are in LA, me working at Free People while I was going through my master's was like the best.
I remember that. I remember that. You were loving it.
It's everything. And I was just like on the ladder and we're drilling things into metal and I'm just like 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was like the best.
But that's why I think taking those two worlds, putting them together somehow, doing things that you still are doing, and like, you know, I think taking all those things, again, I will go back to where we met. Yeah. They were trying to stifle those sides of it too. Like, as if like being fashionable or having those sides of it was like, you can't think of that.
No, I used to get picked on for that.
Yeah. I got picked on it too. I got picked on too because it was like, I cared about it, but I shouldn't have been caring about it because
like we're just
here and we're
and like, who do you think you are? And it was like, I really don't think I'm anyone. I just was like, this is just what I
like it. and it's okay to like it. And again, be authentic,
Yes.
right? Like that, you shouldn't have to hide that part of you, because what's wrong with it?
Yeah.
It's like actually a fun, I think we connected on that too, like liking fashion stuff and, liking each other's outfits or whatever it was.
Like me being always online, being like
shopping. Yes.
Which hasn't changed.
Yes, me too. But it's funny. It's funny to think, because same thing happened to me. I got into like the film and television side of it, because that was always a dream of mine, but I'm still bringing that mental health part of it, because that will never leave me. That's always going to be a part of me. But I love to also feed that creative side of my soul. That was always something that I was like, no, I can't go there. I have to stick to the, more stable and steady. And then I was just like, no, I was miserable doing that.
I know.
So then I had to get into a place where I was doing things that, are a little bit more risky, outside of the box, but it fits
Fills your cup
me.
too, right?
Yeah, it fits me. And if it's, so I love... I think
I love it.
I'm so proud of us.
Like as child and youth workers, like at our core, I think that's a part of us though. There has to be a creative side when you work when you at least start out in child and youth work, or you work with communities of people, of vulnerable people, is like you have to be creative. Like you can't just come in with this box of like, okay, we're going to pull the community card, or we're going to pull this resource. Like I think naturally you're a creative because you have to be.
And you have to be in the moment.
Yes.
You have to be able to not just have this box of stuff that you pull out, but what happens in the moment when shit hits the fan.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Yeah. There's your moment.
Yes.
There's your, what you can see the people that can do it and the people that can't.
Yeah.
Because in crisis is very different than, sitting around and talking about...
And being like programming, right? Programming. When there's crisis, it's all, and we'll call it creative, but it's all like off the whim. And so like if you're not a quick thinker, or you're not creative with a solution or with how to approach somebody, then it can become really difficult.
Yeah.
So I think the creative side is a really great side to like kind of dump we'll call it like the heavy trauma side.
Yes.
And I always say this to my clients, because they're like, how does your brain work like this? And I'm like, imagine like a CSI board. And like, there's your picture in the middle and all the things you're telling me. In my mind, as you and I talk all the time, there's red strings that connect to everything. And my job is to connect that for you.
Yes.
But that's what I picture. It's like this whole creative process, even like in being a therapist, that like it's still creative. Like your mind is still like
working that way. Yeah.
So I think the creative piece of us is the outlet part of it. It like helps to kind of dump and like, I don't know, redefine all of the things that we have in there.
Yeah. It is. And it takes all of your skills and all of your experience and all of your time to get to where you are right now. Right. And all of those pieces, the retail, they all play a part.
Yes.
In who you still are today. So it's like none of it has like left you in a way, right? It's just carrying you through.
I think that's learning too when you get older, like that you don't have to leave a part behind.
Yeah.
That like all of your versions can come with you.
Yes.
And I remember I had a conversation with one of my clients, and she was like, I miss the old me, the me that didn't have kids. I love my kids, but, right? That whole thing. And I work a lot with moms who just had babies, who are trying to figure out like who they are. And the work that we do is like, let's bring some of her with you. Like, don't just leave her behind, right? Like, so I think a lot of us feel that way of like, we just have to kind of like, oh, that stage is over, so I have to become this person now. And it's not authentic, right? Like, we have to bring all of our versions with us because they all did the work.
Yeah.
They all get to come, right? So I think that's why we're like this. That's why we're like this, because we bring all the versions with us, all the crazy.
We have to. Because when we hide it, it's going to come out anyways.
It comes out anyways. And then you're not your authentic self, and people are looking at you like, what is she doing? And you're like, I have no idea. Because like I'm not bringing the true me forward. And I think people now, like just where we are in the world and all of that, like I think people really want to see human people. I think like humanity is such a wonderfully missed thing. We don't see it often, that when you meet a really authentic person, you're like, oh, okay, so they're still good. Like they're still good people. Like I love this.
Yes.
So that's kind of a self-awareness piece of it too, is like, if I'm not being who I am, then am I am I not giving what I should be giving? Or like, how am I feeding humanity if I'm just this closed off, non-authentic version of myself? And I don't feel like it's very social work of me to not be an authentic person.
Yeah.
Social work at the core. It's literally at my core. Like I just breathe it and eat it and sleep it all day.
Well, I love that you went right back to the self-awareness piece, because I feel like that's going to full circle moment to sort of put this little cap on it and say, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Because I really, I knew it was going to be amazing.
Yeah, we knew it.
And I love that we just will continue to, touch base with each other and get, keep the other piece that I will end with is there was a lot of people that we were surrounded by that were trying to bring us down. Mm-hmm. And I always could appreciate how you instantly helped me feel up.
Yep.
And that I will take as something that I will remember as being like, look at us now. We're here. We're doing it. And
we're happy and cute.
And it's okay to be cute.
It's okay to be cute.
It's okay to be cute. And I love you for that. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. I had so much fun.
That's a wrap on this episode of Talk Crazy to Me. Thank you, Tiffany, for joining. And thanks, guys, for watching. See you next time. Bye.